next we're going to have a panel discussion. And coming up to moderate the panel discussion is Enrique Serna, and Enrique is the co-creator, host, and executive producer of the weekly current affairs show on KCTS called KCTS Connect. So, Enrique Serna.
All right. How do you follow that? That's what I want to know. And happy Saturday. I want you to know it's gloomy outside, so you should feel good that you're not missing a really, really nice day out there. All right, I'd like to introduce now our panel and have them come on up and take a seat here. First, Kimberly Harris is the president and CEO of Puget Sound Energy. Welcome. Also, thank you for applauding there. I did not know how to handle that. Lars Johansson is the co-chairman of the Northwest Energy Angels and an entrepreneur in residence at the UW Center for Commercialization. Welcome, Lars. Llwellyn Matthews is the executive director of the Northwest Pulp and Paper Association. DiPeso is one of the founders of Republicans for Environmental Protection, and he's currently the Vice President for Policy and Communications. Welcome, Jim. And finally, Bill Messenger is the Workforce Investment Act Liaison for the Washington State Labor Council. Welcome, Bill. All right, what I'd like to do now is give each of you an opportunity to share about 5 minutes worth of where you stand on this whole issue of carbon price and other insights you want to give us. So why don't we start right out to my right, and Bill, if you'd like to start, go ahead.
Sure, I'll start. Right after lunch. Thanks for inviting me to sit on this panel. As most of you know, I work for the Washington State Labor Council, AFL-CIO. And what I do for a living is I do trade applications, and I have a Workforce Investment Act, dislocated work with a counselor, and help transition people. How I stand on carbon pricing and or cap and trade is, theoretically, I don't have a problem with it, but I do think there's a lot of concerns that need to be addressed before we ever embark on something like this. So that's basically, and I'd like to talk a little bit later on about my concerns over that.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Kimberly Harris, CEO of Puget Sound Energy. And if you'll just hold with me for a second, we have more than 3 individuals here that are Puget Sound Energy employees, and so they all know what's about to happen. But it's not that we pack the audience, but we have a rule in our company: if there's more than 3 employees in the room, then we have to start with a safety moment. So, so you all get to participate in our safety moment. So I actually tried to figure out while I was sitting there, as I counted, that May is actually Bicycle Safety Month. So I thought that would be very a good topic for this group. And how many of you think there's actually a state law on bicycle helmets? There is no state law that you have to wear a bicycle helmet. It's actually an ordinance, sort of city by city. So of course we think that everyone should wear a bicycle helmet. I always thought that was kind of an interesting fact. So back to greenhouse gas policy and carbon price.
I was waiting for drop and cover.
I did that one in the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce.
Ah, cool. All right, we're covered.
It's tough. So, Puget Sound Energy, we do have what we call the greenhouse gas policy, which really deals with carbon. And we've been basically, with everything going on, whether it be carbon tax, cap and trade, cap and dividend, and so forth, a couple of years ago, really a group of us got together and we thought, okay, what are our principles, since everything's moving around so much? What are our principles? And basically we came up with a couple of things that we thought were incredibly important. The first one is, I personally have always been really focusing on the carbon tax. Mainly because there can be a lot of manipulation in setting up any new market. We saw that in the California deregulation market in the early 2000s. And so we have kind of the fear for our customers as far as any new markets. We've always really been focusing on, I wouldn't say it can be a market type of a mechanism, but really more a scenario. And the reason being, we think that any, whether it be dividend, auction, any revenue coming off of carbon actually should go into research and development. So that in a long term, looking at a utility, so there's more research provided, whether it be coal sequestration, whether it be nuclear, whether it be how are we going to get our new set of energy sources. We do not believe, especially in the Pacific Northwest, that anyone should make a windfall off of carbon pricing. And that does tend to happen in this region. There's always winners and losers. So that was our first piece. The other one, as a utility, we make long-term decisions. We're looking out 20 or 30 years. And we need to have a long-term policy. So something that's not going to come into play, we're not going to test it out for 2 or 5 years because we cannot make those decisions with those types of policies. We're looking for a long-term approach. And the last one is that we need to make sure that we remove the barriers for utilities, whether it be through energy efficiency, whether it be for renewables. There should be policies that remove barriers so that we can make long-term investments and the right investments needed. And last, because we don't think any of this is really going to come together, then we protect our customers all the way through this. So any type of pricing needs to have a collar because we do believe that any type of a mechanism is going to take about 5 to 10 years really to parse itself out. So we're always looking at how are our customers going to be impacted by the prices. Looking at it more particularly for us, every 2 years an investor-owned utility needs to file an IRP, an integrated resource plan. We filed our last one was in 2009. We have our current one we're filing actually, we might have filed within the last few days. I'm looking at Will. Did we file?
I don't think yet.
Okay, so we are within days, but the draft is up on our website, so you can actually look at our draft integrated resource plan. In 2009, things happened. We actually showed, we have an ownership share of a coal plant in Montana. I think Jim Lazar was talking about that earlier, Colstrip. And what we did in our integrated resource plan is we showed that Colstrip was actually going offline in about the 2025-2027 timeframe. It caused huge uproar, especially in the environmental community, because they thought that Puget Sound Energy was signaling the end of the coal plant. And so for anyone that actually, since this crowd probably would be the group that would be focused in on this, that was only for depreciation purposes, rate-making purposes. And the only thing that really will bring down Colstrip is economic dispatch, and that is the price of a carbon tax. And we looked at the Markey, the Waxman-Markey bill. So we take about $100 a megawatt hour, somewhere along those lines, really to bring down our coal facility. So that's just looking at us. The last piece that I'm just going to throw out there because I think it's interesting is that several of us had the opportunity to meet with the new premier of British Columbia the other day. And she was very firm that she is going to move forward with the previous premier's carbon tax and all of the different implementation. She did say that she was going to reach out to California on cap and trade, although Jim Lazar gave me the copy of the court opinion. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this region. Are we going to talk about WCI again, or what are we going to do on cap and trade? Because there's definitely a force to move forward on.
All right.